And thank you for joining today's webcast. We're about to begin Get Serious About Social Customer Engagement with Dr. Michael Wu. I'm going to begin with a few points of housekeeping. By now, you should be in the event console. You should see the title slide for today's presentation, a Twitter stream, and a Q&A widget open. You can tweet about this webcast during the presentation with the hashtag SOS2. Please also submit questions during the webcast through the Q&A widget, and we'll be addressing all those that we can get to at the end of the presentation. Please also note there are additional resources available to you at the bottom of your screen, including speaker bio, way to download some additional white papers, including the introduction to the book that we're going to be discussing on this webcast. Please also know that there's, of course, a way to contact us if you'd like to set up a meeting. Right now, I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Lithium Chief Scientist Dr. Michael Wu. Michael received his PhD from UC Berkeley in Biophysics graduate program, where he modeled visual processing within the human brain using math, physics, and machine learning. Michael's currently applying similar data-driven methodologies to investigate and understand the complex dynamics of the social web. He developed our Community Health Index and many predictive social analytics with actionable insights. His R&D work at Lithium has won him the recognition as an influential leader by CRM Magazine, and his findings on influence, reputation, and community are featured in the publication, The Science of Social, Beyond Hype, Likes, and Followers. Today, you guys are going to be among the first to be introduced to a new publication coming out this summer based on the writings of Dr. Wu, The Science of Social 2. Social Strategies for Long-Term Business Advantage and the Science Behind How They Work. But before I kick it over to Dr. Wu, we're going to introduce a little contest that we'll have going on this webcast. The top 10 tweeters today will receive a personalized copy of The Science of Social 2 from Dr. Wu. Top 10 to find how, you might ask? Well, Michael will use his own methodology based on quite a number of criteria. Michael, why don't you tell us about how you're going to pick the winners today?
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. And basically, I thought this would be a fun exercise since I do a lot of analysis on social media. And so we'll do the normal who tweet the most, but in addition to that, we're also going to be, seeing who's being retweeted the most, who's retweeting other people the most, who's more collaborative, and then maybe even, use some like more complex metric like eigenvector centrality or page rank that I'll be using. So it'll be fun. I will write a blog on this and show the top 10 tweeters, and once the book comes out, we'll mail it to you. So I'm going to begin the talk, and so this is the agenda today. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about sustainable social strategy, and then we will talk moving to a little bit of the science behind engagement, and basically look at from anthropology, sociology perspective, and then how do we and then finally we'll apply that to the business setting to build relationship with customers. And then we ask the question of ROI, because that's always very important to everyone. Okay, so let me begin. So there are many social strategies out there, and usually these strategies often address the question of scale, right? And they look very good, in terms of metrics. You get, millions of likes or hundreds of thousands of fans, and even get like 1 million followers. But the potential gain for this type of strategy is very limited, and if by using better technology, help us do like scale better. Okay, so by using better technology, we could scale better. But the problem is that there's actually a hard limit on how much like consumer or customer you can have, right? I mean, the hard limit is basically the world population, and you'll be pretty happy if you actually get there, but most people won't actually get there because the market actually saturates before you even get there. So the reason why this is good but not good enough, is because this is the technology for scale is pretty much commoditized. Everybody could scale nowadays. Even startups Now they could basically use Facebook, Twitter. They could reach millions of potential customers pretty much across the globe, right? And the last point is that there's actually not much sustained business impact if you only scale. The problem is mainly due to the fact that in social media you don't really keep what you acquire. Okay, once you actually acquire a fan or you acquire a follower, you don't really own them, right? I mean, you acquire a fan, Mark Zuckerberg still has them, right? And when you look at when you have a social campaign based on these like scalable strategy, typically the type of metric that you see is a huge spike on buzz or activity, whatever metric you want to measure. But if you look at the economic impact on the business, you get some blip, but it's a tiny blip, and then it goes back to pretty much normal. Okay, so now this brings us to the next question, right? So there's very few social strategy that actually address the question of sustainability. Okay, that means would it work like years down the line? Would it work like year, 2 year, 5 year, 10 years? Not very many of us think about that, okay? And the main problem is because while the future is really uncertain and unknown, right? Nobody knows what happens in the future, right? So this is where science can really help you, because science, actually makes the future less uncertain by removing some of the uncertainty by applying data analysis or predictive analytics, and so we know when things will work, and not only like why it works, but when it will work and what condition under which it will work. And this is actually what we'll talk about today. Okay. Moreover, the future actually never saturates, right? Unlike scale, there's a hard limit. The future is pretty much limitless. You could sustain as long as you want, right? So successful brands must adopt a strategy that's both scalable and sustainable. Okay. So what would be a sustainable type of social strategy look like? So a very good example that I'm going to introduce is Jeffrey Moore's like 4 gears model. And I had the great honor to work with Jeffrey, and this is a very elegant model, and I'm going to just tell you a little bit about it to start off. So basically, the 4 gears is basically first acquire. And then the traditional way of doing business is that after you acquire, you monetize them, right? So this is the traditional way of business. However, as I said before, in the social era, you don't really keep what you acquire, right? You get a few minutes or a few seconds of their attention, and then they're gone. Okay, so in order to win in the social era, what you need is 2 additional gears, right? So you need what we call the engagement gear, right? So the engagement actually help you sustain monetization, right? Before, if you only acquire and monetize, basically you monetize them one time, a few times, and then they're gone, okay? And basically engagement allow you to earn the right to keep them here, and so you can monetize them over and over again, all right? And then after you monetize them, you basically can enlist them, right? So now enlistment basically means that now that you have your customers, you can ask them to help you, enlist them, and to help you in doing your acquisition. Basically, that helps you acquire more customers. Okay, so it helps you scale acquisition. So this is a strategy that addresses the sustainability and the scalability issue. Okay, so it sustains monetization and it helps you scale, because you typically you have many more customers than you have employees, right? If a customer, and moreover, like customers word of mouth is actually more effective than branded messaging. So they actually help you acquire better and more effectively, right? So basically, Jeffrey's model says that when you have all these 4 gears spinning, right, you create this viral loop, right? That means like you acquire customers and then you engage them, so you keep them, and then you can monetize them over the long term, and then you enlist some of some of your customers to help you acquire even more, right? So now you have a loop, right? What that means is that this loop will keep going. If all four of these gears keep going, then you will basically have a very sustainable engine that will go on indefinitely, right? Okay, so today we are going to basically focus on one of these gears, okay? We're only going to focus on the engagement gear. So now, engagement is actually not difficult. Right? It's not as difficult as what most people think. Anyone can engage, right? The challenge is really to engage in the long term. How do you engage sustainably, right? So by analyzing lots of engagement or interaction data that we have, basically we find that the prerequisite for sustained engagement is basically a strong relationship. Think about all the people that you engage in long term, not sporadically, like, that anyone can do, okay? Like if basically if you want to engage people, you could use cat videos, cute puppies, anything could drive engagement. But try to do that 100 times or, over a few years, right? People is going to get tired, right? So think about all the engagement that you have that is sustained over the long term, like years, on the orders of years, 5 years, Typically, a prerequisite is that you have some kind of relationship with those people, okay? So we have to understand how relationship works. So this will be the main topic of today's discussion. So we are going to review a little bit about the science of social. Basically, the important point there is that social is really not a new thing, right? If you look at it, social media is new, but social, is actually very old. Humans have been social since we were cavemen, right? And just to illustrate how similar, all the way back in thousands of years ago to what we have today is that even though back then we don't have Facebook, there actually is a wall, and people do write on other people's wall. And if you don't like people writing on your wall, then you push them off the wall too, just like you unfriend them basically. So it's actually very similar to what we do today, right? So because social is so robust and so ingrained in our human history, what that means is that we can actually look at social from an anthropology's perspective, right? If we do that, what we will find is that there's actually only two classes of social media, right? So what that means is we instead of focusing on the technology, we focus on the relationship that it enables, right? So if we do that, basically there's only two classes of social media. The two classes basically social network and community, okay? And now these are social structures that's really, really robust in the human history. Basically every civilization that ever existed has social network and community, right? So basically they exist, before there were social media, before there were even computers. All right, so now let's try to take a look how social operates, before the digital era by following a hypothetical character named Bob as he built his social network, okay? All right, so let's say Bob is coming to a community, a little town called Emeryville, right? This is actually where Lithium is now. We are actually here, this is actually the last day we're going to be here. Next week we'll be moving to San Francisco. So within this Emeryville, this is actually a community. There's actually lots of people, right? And there's also lots of weak ties. So this dotted line illustrates weak ties. That means these are people who know each other casually. They kind of know each other's name, but don't know too much more than that, right? And there's also a lot of strong ties as well. These could be friends that they grew up together, they know each other for a long time, could even be relatives, right? And so these are illustrated by these solid lines. And there's a lot of these old members who tend to have a lot of strong ties, and there's also lots of new members who basically don't have very many ties. Now, the first thing Bob does when he joins this community is that he's going to establish some weak ties first, right? No one's born with all the relationship that we have today, right? So everything starts out weak. So he's going to, basically build some weak ties. And then over time, some of those weak ties basically get strengthened into strong ties, right? So some of those dotted lines get strengthened into solid lines, right? And then something could happen. Basically, say Bob could basically he'd go to college, right? And notice something really interesting. Even though he has left the community, right, he left Emeryville, the relationship that he built, the strong tie that he built, stays with him, right? He takes those relationships with him to college, right? So basically what he can do, basically the same thing as in college. He could have, hundreds and thousands of friends, but some of them would become his strong tie, and then he basically could take those strong tie with him as he go to work, right? And then he could do the same thing at work again, right? And then take those strong relationships that he built at work to his next job or wherever. So notice something. Social network kind of form naturally within communities as people establish relationships, right? And moreover, social network maintain relationships that are kind of, that's built within the community as people move between communities, all right? So this is how, social network is built, in our, for thousands of years, before there were computers. So now you know how social network is built. I want you to kind of contrast that with what a community is, right? So social network is actually held together by pre-existing interpersonal relationships, all right? Now think about there's actually lots of studies from academia that, show that over 99% of the friendship on Facebook were first established somewhere else. They didn't actually know each other on Facebook. They were established somewhere else, right? So this is actually, those are relationships that already exist, before they come on Facebook, right? And there are actually other characteristics, of social networks such that as, everyone has basically one social network, and everybody's in it because you basically connect to everyone directly, right? So notice that even though there are many, many different social networking platforms out there, right? There's LinkedIn, there's Facebook, right? But those are actually all part of one person's, somebody's social network, right? My social network consists of my relatives, my friends, and my colleagues, right? But my colleagues is showing up on my LinkedIn social graph, right? So it's basically a different platform simply maintaining a different type of relationship, but they're all part of my social network. Now, the difference between a community and social network is that they're not held together by pre-existing interpersonal relationships, but instead they're held together by a common interest. Okay, so because there don't need to be any pre-existing relationship. As a result, most people who come to the community actually don't know most of the other members in the community, and moreover, any one person can actually be part of many different communities at any given time. Okay, now this social network and community actually look very different, right? So structurally, I'm sure you probably can imagine a network basically looks like a network, and community has this more complex hierarchical structure. They overlap. There's sub-communities within community. So some examples that you're all familiar with is that, for example, Facebook, LinkedIn, Google+, Twitter, they're all social networks, right? Google+ and Twitter is actually a hybrid, because some people, there can actually be common interest on those as well, okay? Now, community, is basically anything that has that's held together by common interest, right? So all the other pretty much all the social platform, public social media platform that for example, like Flickr, YouTube, Yelp, they all are communities, right? Basically, the common interest for Flickr is basically photography, right? For YouTube is video. For Yelp is basically food, right? And Wikipedia is basically a common goal to create a free encyclopedia, right? Okay. So now, because community and social network has such a robust kind of function in human history, they play a really critical role in our relationship. So let's take a look at the life cycle relationship. Now, as I said before, all relationships starts out basically disconnected, right? No one's born with any relationship, right? So basically everybody's kind of disconnected to everybody else at first, right? But the first step you need to do in building a relationship or establishing a relationship is you have to create a weak tie first, right? After you create a weak tie, you have to build the tie strength so the weak tie eventually become a strong tie, right? But that's not the end of the story, because strong tie actually have to be maintained, right? If you don't maintain it, if you don't do anything, then eventually you revert back to a weak tie, and if you do something like mean and horrible to your friends, then you basically get disconnected, right? Now, so there's 3 steps, right? Creating weak tie, building tie strength, and maintaining the relationship. Now, step 1 is really easy, right? All it really takes is a hello, right? If I just meet you for the first time, basically I introduce myself, and there's a weak tie there, right? And we know each other by name, the first name basis, and then that's basically, that starts the process of building relationship. Now, from the earlier part of this talk, we know we talk about what is the social structure that maintains relationship, right? Basically, what maintains relationship is social network, right? We've seen that with Bob, with the hypothetical character, right? Now, all these are maintained. Now, remember, social networks are held together by pre-existing interpersonal relationship, right? So these relationships are already existent. So as a scientist, I can't help but asking, well, where would those relationships first establish, right? It turns out that they were first established within some communities, okay? So community actually built these relationships into strong ties. So now if you think about your own social network, for example, your Facebook or your LinkedIn network, right? I mean, for every one of the connection that you have, or every one of the friends you have on Facebook, you share some community with them in the past, right? Whether it is kindergarten or same school that you went to, or same company that you work with them, right? And those are the community in which you built those weak ties into strong ties, and that's why they are now maintained in your social network today. Okay, so that's how community and social network function together to kind of establish, build relationship, and maintain relationship. Now, so we talk a lot about relationship, but the interesting question is, well, what is a relationship? Right? I mean, relationship, we all sort of have some ideas what it is, but if I ask you to define it, it's actually very difficult. If I ask you to define it, so well that you can actually measure it, it's actually even more difficult, right? But we all have some intuitive sense what it is. So we are going to take the sociology's perspective of relationship. So in sociology, basically a relationship is basically a tie or connection between 2 entities, right? So for social relationship, these entities will typically be people, right? But they don't have to be. They could be, relationship could be between companies, between countries even, right? Between nations, like foreign relationship. Or, if you have between company and customer, you could have customer relationship. So now there's also a tie strength that's associated with these connection, with the connection. Now, what characterizes tie strength is by Granovetter, he's actually a very renowned sociologist. Now he's actually at Stanford, right? He basically published a paper called The Strengths of Weak Tie, and he basically, in that paper, he said there's actually 4 components to a relationship, and he called this time, intensity, trust, and reciprocity, right? So time is actually the amount of time spent together, right? That's actually not the time, the duration of the relationship. I could actually, know my cousin since he was born, but if I don't actually spend time growing up with him, playing with him, then we actually don't have such a strong relationship. Now, intensity is actually how emotionally intense this sense of closeness that you have with someone, right? So I may see my colleague every day, but some of my relatives, like for example my cousin, who I don't see very often, but I have more emotional intensity to them because we related somehow, right? Now, trust is basically how transparent you are, how open you are to each other, and reciprocity is basically the amount of reciprocal service, right? So we will review this a little bit later. So if you don't remember these 4 components, just remember that strong relationship requires a lot of time and attention, right? So it certainly needs time to do reciprocal service for each other. It certainly require your attention to have this intensity and trust for each other, right? Now, the problem is that we have an attention economy today, right? We only have 24 hours a day, and we only have fixed amount of attention. So now the question is, how many meaningful relationships can we actually have? Right, that's an interesting question. There's actually a professor by the name of Robin Dunbar. He came up with this Dunbar limit. I'm sure some of you have heard of this, right? But I don't think a lot of you know how that number came about. So I'm going to tell you a little bit how he actually discovered that number. Because Robin Dunbar he's actually an evolutionary biologist, and he studies primate groups, and he studied the relationship between their brain size and their group size, right? And he basically found that, basically the bigger the brain you have, you can have a bigger group, okay? So he actually extrapolated, from 38 primate species, to the human neocortex, our human brain size, basically, because, if you look at this, these are basically the 38 kind of species of primate that he studied, right? Basically, the x-axis is basically the size of their brain, and the y-axis is their group size, right? How many individuals in that group. So I don't think it takes a genius to see that there's a relationship there, right? It's a pretty linear relationship. But the thing is that, we know how big our brain is, right? So basically, we just plug it in there, right? Since we know how big our brain is, he extrapolated that, right? And come up with a number 148. He said basically that should be the optimal group size for human, right? And that came as a surprise to him, and he basically didn't quite believe it, as a good scientist. So he basically went back and do a lot of survey, and he's basically surveying a lot of pre-industrial age villages and tribes. But strangely, it came out quite close. They're not exactly 150, but more or less on average, they are pretty close to 150. Okay, this actually is pretty surprising. Now the question is, well, that was pre-industrial age, right? I mean, basically he looked at these tribes, but in the modern day, it'd be interesting to see, does the Dunbar limit actually still hold in the modern day, right? So let's kind of look at this in a kind of interesting way here. I'm going to introduce a way of looking at relationship by ordering our relationship from the strongest to the weakest. Okay, so basically the strongest one may be your spouse or your children. Your parents could come next, right? And if you have a sibling, maybe they come next. And you may have some really close friend. Maybe some of these close friends may be closer than your siblings, right? Now you could basically arrange your relationship from the strongest to the weakest, right? All the way down to some close acquaintance, right? So these are actually, I don't have a word for these people. I call them close acquaintance because they actually know them pretty well. These are actually, pretty strong ties, but they're the weakest of all among your kind of close friends, okay? Now, if you, basically this creates what we call a relationship profile for every person. Now, every person is going to have a different profile. Everybody is going to have different person as their number one, or they're maybe they have some friends that are really closer than their parents or something like that. So everyone's relationship profile is different, but everyone has a relationship profile, right? And now if you look at those people who are in the pre-industrial villages and tribes, basically they only know about 150 people. Basically this cuts off at about 150. Okay, so now Dunbar's limit may not hold today, for several reasons, right? Because, today, our kind of necessity for social cohesion is actually a lot weaker. And then our communication today is actually much more efficient, right? So perhaps we can actually maintain more relationship by having more, better, more efficient communication. But remember how Dunbar actually come up with this number, right? He studied the human brain, right? Now, the problem is our brain size actually haven't changed for the last 3,000-4,000 years. Okay, so our brain hasn't changed for the last millennia. So what that means is that, we actually can have more than 150 friends, but there's a trade-off, right? We have to trade off for something. Now, one way is that if we have fewer strong ties, right? Basically, we compress this distribution kind of sideways like this, right? But what we're really doing is that we are taking the attention and time that's necessary to maintain some of those stronger ties and allocate them to the weaker ties, right? And there's another way that we could do that, right? Is that basically we have weaker strong ties, right? Basically, this is we basically compress this distribution downward, like this. All right. Now this happens, basically, we could see this, basically, if you look at it from compare our life with the pre-industrial age, right? In the pre-industrial age, children live with their parents all their life, right? They pretty much spend lots of time when they know everything about their parents. But today we still call our parents strong ties, but our notion of this strong tie is actually a lot weaker because we don't actually talk to our parents as much, or maybe we don't even live with them, and we don't even call them that often, So our notion of a strong tie actually becomes a lot weaker nowadays. Okay, so again, this is the same thing, right? Basically, we are taking the attention and time that's necessary to maintain those strong ties, and then allocate them to the weaker ties. Right? Now, so basically, if you look at it from resource allocation perspective, basically we only have a fixed amount of time and attention. Right? So that means we can allocate them any way we want. So what that means is that the area under that yellow kind of blob and this blue blob is actually the same, but we could kind of reshape them any way we want. Okay? So that's actually how human interpersonal relationship works. Okay? Now, how can we apply this to business and try to understand relationship between customer and brand? Right? So now, one thing I have to say before I go in this section is that customer relationship with brand is always going to be weaker than interpersonal relationship with people. Always. Okay? Because part of it is really because we just don't have the same kind of intensity for a brand, right? Imagine your favorite brand, disappear off the earth versus, you just have a casual kind of acquaintance who disappear off the earth. The feeling is very different, right? I mean, that's just the way we made. We can't really change that. That's just being part of being human. Right? So, all right. So now the interesting thing is that now we, as we look at this, how to apply this kind of what we find to relationship with customer is that we find something called a Facebook irony, right? So basically, Facebook contains a lot of our strong ties. Now, by definition, these strong ties is going to demand a lot of our attention, right? And they're going to win, right? Because that's why they're strong ties, right? So now, it's ironic because Facebook is basically too good at maintaining these strong ties, so it created a problem for itself, right? And the problem it created for itself is that in the presence of these strong ties, the weaker ties are harder to develop into strong ones, right? And guess what? Who are the weak ties? Basically, relationship with brand, right? So now if you are a brand, right, if you already have a strong relationship with your customer, great. Maintain them with Facebook is the way to go, right? But if you don't have strong tie with your customer, right, trying to build relationship on Facebook will actually hinder the development of those ties because those are weak ties, right? Because the strong ties are going to win, right? Because their family and friend is going to win. And we see this all the time, in our daily life. Basically, if we, for example, if you travel to a country that you've never been to and you don't have a lot of existing friends there, right? You find that it's actually a lot easier to make friends there because you are devoid of these strong ties, right, in that environment, right? Same thing as if you move into, if you join a new company. If you join a new company, you basically don't have a lot of strong relationship already established, right, then it becomes really easy to make friends in this new company. But after you start establishing a lot of strong ties, basically they are going to take up a lot of your time and attention, right? Basically it becomes very difficult to make more and more new friends, right? Basically those become harder and harder to develop into the strong ties, right? You can still make a lot of weak ties, but those weak ties become really hard to develop into strong ones, right? So same thing happens for brand, right? All right. So now the question is, well, basically this is just an illustration. Basically, it's nice to have a car with great acceleration, but it could be too fast for your dog, right? So it's good. On Facebook, it's actually very good at maintaining the strong ties, but for the weak ties, not so good, all right? So now the question is that, well, how can we build stronger relationship with our customer then, right? How do we actually do that? Now, basically to do this, we have to kind of go back to the basics. We have to go back and look at the 4 components that we visited earlier, right, of relationship. Now, the first component is basically time, right? So time, like I said, is basically the actual time spent together. It's not the duration of the relationship, right? So if you actually don't spend a lot of time together, then you don't build that relationship. So time actually can increase your tie strength, right? But that's pretty simple, right? But if you think about it, the more time you spend together, the stronger tie you build, right? But it's actually not that simple, right? It actually depends on something else, right? If the desire to spend time together is mutual, then yes, the more time you spend together, the stronger, the relationship you have. It actually will increase your intensity too, it blossom into something as love like this. Now, but if the desire to spend time is not mutual, right? The more time you try to spend with another person, right? You actually decrease the other person's intensity for you, right? If you actually try to, spend a lot of time when the other person actually don't want to spend time with you, that's actually like a stalker, right? You can actually turn this intensity into something negative, into hate, basically, right? So time increases your tie strength only if the desire to spend time together is mutual, right? Now, so the key here is really to know when your customer wants to spend time with you and be there for them when they want to spend time with you. And if they don't want to spend time with you, and just don't bug them, right? Because if you try to spend time with them that they don't want to spend, that you try to spend time with them that they don't want to spend with you, then you can actually decrease the intensity, right? Okay, so that's time. Now let's take a look at the second component, right? That's intensity, right? So intensity, like I said before, customers' intensity for brand is always going to be lower than the intensity for their friend, right? And that's just, like I said, part of it is just genetic, and we really just can't control too much about it, right? So, but there are tactics that we could leverage. Basically, we can do something such as appeal to greater cause that your customer actually have strong emotions for, right? That you actually care about, such as being a green company, being environmental. You may such as pink ribbon for the breast cancer, right? So if you have these higher cause that your customer have strong emotions for, then basically your customer can associate some of those strong emotions to your brand, right? So basically, this is a tactic. It doesn't always work for all the brands. If you make like forklift or something, then it's going to be pretty hard to pull that off, right? Maybe you could do environment or something, So the key here is don't try too hard here, because this is the component that we have the least control over, right? So, but if it does work with your brand, then it will work nicely, all right? Okay, so the third component is trust, okay? Now trust is where social media can really, really help you excel here, right? Now, transparency basically creates an environment that's very conducive for building trust, right? Think about this. If I am completely transparent to you, right? If you know everything about me, every thought that I have, right? Maybe a little scary there, but if you know everything about me, what is there to distrust about me, right? There's basically nothing to distrust me, right? So basically, transparency is very good for building this trust. Now, there's actually two types of transparency. First is what I call B2C. This is brand to customer, right? So brands need to let customers know, the kind of a little bit about the inner working of the brand, right? How the company work, and share some with the customers. So they could do that with blog, with Twitter, and share stuff on Facebook and so on and so forth, right? But there's also another type of transparency. This is what I call C2C transparency. Okay. Now, basically, this means that one customer have to know about how another customer think about this brand, right? So this is very good with you could achieve this with a community or discussion forum where they can kind of discuss openly with each other, right? So basically, a platform for peer-to-peer sharing and interaction, right? So this basically, so if you can achieve these two types of transparency, that's a great start. But there's actually another way to build trust, and that's coming from the understanding that people ultimately trust themselves, right? So they basically trust brands that co-create with them, right? So basically, co-creation is actually a very good way to build trust. Now, there's also two types of co-creation. One is what I call passive co-creation, right? This is basically you just listen to the customer's conversation. You use some social media monitoring system to just listen and kind of glean insights from the customer, right? And there's another type is what I call active co-creation. Now, this is where you actually actively crowdsource ideas from your customer and ask them to help you prioritize by collaborative filtering, right? So this is two ways of co-creating with the customer, right? And both are great for building trust. So what's the key to building trust? Basically, there's two things, right? One is that you want to create a transparent and authentic communication channel to your customer and among your customer, right? And two is that you want to co-create with your customer, okay? Now, both of these can be achieved very nicely on social media, right? Now, what about the last component? Basically, this is reciprocity, right? Reciprocity is basically a two-way reciprocal service, right? So now, the key here is actually the two-way, right? A lot of brands are forgetting the other way, right? They're always saying that, we are serving our customers, right? But, the key is really let your customer help you a little bit, right? So you should make it easy for customer to help your brand, right? For example, make it easy for them to help each other, right? Because if they help each other, they essentially help you, right? And you also want to, basically reward them properly and serve them right? Basically, so now this creates this two-way reciprocal service, right? And now another way to do this is basically through co-creation, right? Because co-creation is essentially, customers helping you and you're helping them, right? Because if they are helping you to basically learn about what will serve them better, and if you actually implement their ideas, then you actually help them, right? So this is actually a nice way to do kind of this increase this reciprocity as well. Okay, so basically the key is here for reciprocity is that don't forget to let your customer help you, right? This is actually very important, right? A little bit of investment on the customer side is actually good for building a relationship, right? I mean, we know this for human relationship, but it's surprising that very few brands actually recognize this when it comes to customer relationship, right? So now, one key is that this has to be opt-in, right? You can't actually force them to or require them to co-create with you or or make them help you, right? If they have to want to do that themselves, right? So now we know how to kind of build each of the components, right, of the relationship. Basically, this serves as a foundation for us to kind of build relationship with your customer, right? Now, we know that basically, we can't really build relationship on Facebook, right? But we also know that in human, right, relationship is built in a community, right? We've seen that earlier, right? Basically, community is where we build our weak ties into strong ties, and a social network is what maintains our strong ties, right? So let's take a look, see whether we can use a customer community to build this relationship, right? Basically, we could do this by examining whether a customer community would support all 4 of these pillars of a relationship, right? So first, customer community is completely opt-in, right? Basically, it's there when the customer wants to use it, and it won't come, bug the customer if the customer don't want to spend any time, right? It's perfectly, completely opt-in, and they could participate as much as they want, as little as they want. Now, there may be a greater cost, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, some community, have, donate, some of their, profits, to charity, so it may have a greater cost, but it doesn't have to be. But like I said, this component the intensity component is the one that we could control the least, so don't worry too much if you can't do too much there, right? Now, what about trust, right? So community is definitely a transparent communication channel, right? It's transparent both ways, right? Basically, brands can communicate to their customers on the community, and customer can kind of communicate with each other on a community as well, right? And it's certainly a platform for co-creation, because if you just have to implement an ideation engine, right, then you could co-create within the community. And now lastly, community certainly enables reciprocity, right? Certainly do it by reciprocity, right? And basically, if you make it easy for one customer to help another customer, you enable them to kind of help you already, right? So basically, community supports all 4 of these pillars, right? So basically, what that means is that customer relationships are basically built the same way as interpersonal relationships, right? They are built in the community, right? And they can be maintained on social network, but they're built within the community, right? So now, remember I said earlier that the engagement gear, going back to the gear model that we talked about earlier, right? The engagement gear help you sustain monetization, right? And basically, if we can build strong relationship, that's going to give us more loyal customer, right? We can basically have customer loyalty. So let's take a look at some case studies, right? So FICO basically did a case study with us over 3 years, right? So they compare community member spending versus non-member, and basically the first year they find a gain of more 37% more, and then over the next 2 years they increased to 39 and 41% respectively, right? So now if you look at this over time, right, the total cumulative gain is actually very huge, right? You get the 37% gain from the first year, right? But if there's a repeat kind of purchase, right, you get this. You no longer get this percentage gain. You get this multiplicative gain, right? So you get this 3 times, right? Is 300% gain. So basically, loyal customer manifests itself in repeat purchase, right? And so the total cumulative gain can be very, very huge as you sustain that over time, right? If we do this like over 10 years, the gain could be very, very huge, right? Now this is actually very prominent in product that we could buy more frequently, right? So FICO is a financial service. We probably buy our credit report maybe once or twice a year, but if we look at a company where the product we could buy very frequently, such as Sephora, this is actually very prominent, right? So if you compare member spending versus average customer, community member spending spends actually 2.5 times more, right? And then the super fans actually spend 10 times more. And a lot of this is basically essentially due to repeat purchase, right? So, okay. So basically this is how the engagement gear will essentially help us extend or sustain monetization, right? It helps us keep the customer over the long term so we can monetize them over the long term, right? So the key to sustain engagement is basically relationship, right? So we talk about relationship are maintained in social network, but they're built within the community, right? And there are 4 components of relationship: time, intensity, trust, and reciprocity, right? And there's also a Facebook irony. Basically, in the presence of strong ties such as family and friends, right? The weaker ties, such as brand to customer relationship, are harder to develop into strong ones. And the fourth point is that, but however, brands can still build a deep relationship with your customers with a customer community by building all four components of a relationship. And lastly, deep customer relationship manifests themselves in loyalty, and we get basically ROI over time, right? So now with this kind of insight, basically we learn how to spin our engagement gear, right? We know how to keep it spinning for long term. Now you may ask, well, what about the other gears, right? So I'm afraid I don't have time to tell you about other gears, but you can certainly read about it as this book comes out. So with that, I'm going to give it back to Bonnie. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Michael. We have had some really interesting questions come in, and so I'm going to pull those up. I've been jotting them down, and we still have them coming in through the Twitter stream. Please do either put more questions through the Twitter stream or through the Q&A interface in the presentation manager. So first I'm going to go back to few things that you said about tie strength. Mm-hmm. We had some questions about how it's calculated, and is there a spectrum of tie strength? Is it either or how does one go about calculating that? Yeah,
it is actually a spectrum, right? Remember the relationship profile that I showed you earlier, right? It certainly is a spectrum because it goes pretty much smoothly, from the strongest to the weakest one, right, that you have. All right, we kind of all know who is our strongest tie and who is our weakest tie. Calculating it is actually very difficult, right? Basically, I'm actually working on this, a little bit, in my spare time here. Basically, we can actually use the four component as a basis, right? We can definitely measure how much time a person spends with a brand, right? That we can measure. Intensity is hard to measure, right? But like I said, that one probably we can't do very much about. But like I said, that one also has the least effect anyway, right? And we can measure trust by actually monitoring, see how transparent the company is, right, with their customer, right? How much do they reveal, right? Do they reveal, down to, their finance, or do they, or is there something only the product stuff that they reveal? So how transparent they are, right? It's an indication of a trust, right? And we could do that from the brand's perspective and also between the customer, right? For example, like how much are the customer able to kind of interact with other customers, right? Are they able to kind of read others' review or what they talk about the brand? And then lastly, reciprocity is actually pretty easy. We can actually see how many reciprocal service on the community, right? So I think that we could use that as a basis, but actually calculating it is actually very hard because it's not a straight linear relationship. Because like I showed you before, right, if you spend time that they don't want to spend with you, it affects the other component, right? One component actually affects another. So this is actually not an easy problem, unfortunately, but we could certainly use the four component relationship as a foundation to start.
That's actually a nice segue into the next question. You just talked about the four components of developing strong relationships, and you said some are easier than others. How about, are any more important than others? Can you prioritize these at all, or?
I don't think any one is more important, but I think there are certainly some that are easier, right? So like I said, trust and reciprocity are actually easier, right? That's where social media is going to really help you, right? And time, you just can't do too much. So I mean, you kind of have to let them come to you, right? And intensity, is the one that we have least control of. So so I would say that if you're going to prioritize them, prioritize reciprocity, trust, and then time, and then intensity last.
Okay, I have to move on to this one because this one's funny. So should we completely give up on Facebook?
Well, they're good for something, right? They're good for relationships that are already established, right? The strong ties, right? So if you have strong ties with your customer or your client, sure, maintain them on Facebook. That's perfectly fine. There are functions for community, and anthropologically there is a need for both community and social media, right? Community is where you build the weak ties into a strong tie, and social network is where you maintain those strong ties, right? So they're both needed.
So actually, this one might need you can drill down into this one a little bit, and I might be getting it wrong. But the question is, so is Facebook really worth the effort to try to build? Is it worth the effort to try to build a community around Facebook? So that's Facebook is not a community, right? So
yeah, I think that is going to be pretty hard, right? So structurally, so Facebook, the main platform, right, is a social network, right? But if you look at Facebook fan page, right, it actually meets the condition to be a community. Right? Facebook fan page can be a community, but it's actually a poor community because it's actually on a social network that has a lot of strong ties, right? So certainly on the Facebook fan page, right, it's held together by a common interest, right? Whatever interest that might be, you could have it on a fan page or for biking or for the brand or for whatever, and people don't know most people on a fan page, and also you can be part of many fan pages, right? So that actually meets the condition to be a community, but it's not a good one because precisely of the Facebook irony, right? In the presence of your strong ties, your friends and family, that community's the weak ties there is going to be very, very hard to develop into strong ones.
So we're almost approaching the top of the hour. Thank you all for your great questions. We're not going to be able to get to them all. I thought I might maybe combine a couple of questions here into one concept. We're getting a lot of questions about what about B2B? What about industries like paper products, that are unsexy products or what have you. And then we're also getting questions about, can you define co-creation a little bit and how that might be different per industry? And that might be, say, if that could combine the two and say this is how you would approach for this industry or that.
I see. So let me maybe address the question of co-creation first. So co-creation, if you want to look for definition, is two things. It's the collaboration and mutual adaptation between the brand and customer to create value. Okay, so that's the definition. So there's two components, right? There's you have to collaborate with your customer, right, or your client, or if you're a B2B brand, then you have to collaborate with your business partner or whoever it is, right? So but like I said, and there's also the second component is the mutual adaptation. That means you have to learn from each other, right? If you are a consumer brand, then customer have to learn about the brand, and the brand have to learn from the customer as well, right? Without this kind of mutual adaptation, co-creation doesn't work as well, okay? So you have to have that mutual adaptation. And so I think it works, in terms of like B2B or different industry, this is not a technology or problem. This is a human problem, right? If the business involves human, it's going to work. So yeah. So it's that simple. So
far, all of our businesses that we know of do involve humans. So
yeah.
I think we'll leave it on that. We're at the top of the hour. Thank you all so much. Very fascinating, interesting Twitter stream. Thanks for all of your questions. And
I will analyze the tweet stream, and I will write a blog and post the winners. And once the book comes out, we'll mail it to you.
Right on. And we'll also follow up with emails about how you can access all of this information. Thanks so much.